the fact that I went through all that pain kind of carved into me the capacity for joy. And that didn't really start happening until I started allowing myself to feel the pain. Hi, I'm James Kerr. I'm a tattoo artist, musician, and a trauma survivor. Been on this healing journey for a long time now, and it's led me here talking to you. I enjoy talking about heavy stuff like life, death, spirituality, trauma, and ways to cope with trauma. But it's not all serious. I like to joke a lot too. Welcome to the Fire of Truth podcast. Reflections on my conversation with Ted Marks, and I've known him for a very long time, as you all can tell. And I relate to a lot of what he said in his experience in similar fashion, because I had a similar kind of thing going on when I became an apprentice too. So, one of the things that stood out to me in our conversation was the sacrifices that him and his family had to make in order for him and for his family to get to where they are now. And it seemed pretty dire, and it seemed like everything was going to fall apart. And it pretty much was. One of my coaches gave me this phrase: the breakthrough comes after the breakdown. And I really like that phrase because it definitely was true. In my experience of becoming an apprentice, like, I made a lot of sacrifices as well. I was married, I had a baby. He was, I don't know, how old was he? Like 3 or 4 actually. So he was a toddler. And the sacrifice that I made is my time with them, because I was also in a hardcore band, and we did some touring. I was also a full-time student, and using the financial aid that I was getting from that to fund my apprenticeship. And I was at the shop 7 days a week, so I really didn't have a day off. And so I sacrificed a lot of my time with my wife and my son, and I sacrificed the time with the most important people in my life to do what I wanted to do, which was tattoo. And I know a lot of that probably resonate with a lot of tattoo artists out there who have all done similar things, strained their relationships. And it was a strain on my wife and I's relationship for real. And I'm very lucky that we had the resiliency to pull through and figure it out and adapt and move and bob and weave, so we didn't have any like permanent trouble in our relationship, which is really good. It's kind of related to, like, another takeaway, kind of this overarching theme in this conversation I could see is how bad shit that happens to us oftentimes leads us to where we want to go. And in my case, a great example of where that happens in my life was how I got my apprenticeship to begin with. I had gotten laid off from my job that I'd worked there for a few years. I was a boat maker, and I made boats at a company called Wing Inflatables. And they basically lost a contract that they had that they were counting on. And I was recently a rehire. So I was on this list of people that were kind of recently hired, even though I, had worked there a few years prior. I got laid off with like 12 other people, kind of unexpectedly, honestly. And so at the time I was like, what the fuck? I ended up, luckily, like, going to school at College of the Redwoods and studying digital media. I got I went full-time there. I got enrolled full-time, and I had no idea that I was going to be an apprentice. I had been scratching in my kitchen, basically a kitchen wizard, tattoo-wise, for a few years, and I had basically stopped doing that at the time. I wasn't getting anywhere with it. I had always known that I wanted to be an apprentice and I wanted to own a shop. But I knew, at least at the time, I knew that if I really wanted to own a shop, I better know what I was doing, right? Like, so and when I kind of gave up on the idea, it was around the same time that I got laid off at Wing Inflatables, gave up on the idea of tattooing altogether, and then went to school full time at College of the Redwoods, studying digital media. And then playing in a band, doing all of that. And luckily I was able to use like the homework that I had for digital media as also some band promotion too. So all of that, like getting laid off kind of stress, like really led me into having the financial ability and the time to be an apprentice. Because then I met my mentor, and then I bugged him for like 3 months before he finally agreed to take me on as an apprentice. And so all of that kind of led, like that was one of my takeaways. I think my main takeaway from the conversation with Ted is that bad shit can lead to good stuff too, man. And that's also like true, I think, it can be true in like trauma recovery and the healing journey as well. A lot of suffering that we go through can essentially lead us to the light. Like the fact that I'll speak from my own experience. The fact that I have had suffered so much as a child and then went into the world of doing drugs to kind of cope with all of that darkness, and ended up, because of that coping mechanism, ending up into seeing madness and more darkness. I have that perspective because I now know what the light is, and I now have value in myself, and I have more value in life in general than I think I would have if I hadn't seen the darkness. And I really feel like the fact that I went through all that pain kind of carved into me the capacity for joy. And that didn't really start happening until I started allowing myself to feel the pain. And that's, I think, the key is to, and if you're wanting to be an emotional alchemist or, turn that shit into gold, you have to allow yourself to process the shit. Because if you're stifling all of that stuff, then it's not going to transmute. And so that is one of the other things that I've been through that is an example of going through bad shit and then turning into good shit. There's definitely some intention that has to be sought in that process, I think, too. This industry and the people in it, and specifically certain people we know like Joshua Carlton, are a continual inspiration to us and continue to drive us to be better artists today than we were yesterday. And I really feel that in my soul that is what keeps me going in this industry. Even now when it seems oversaturated, and that maybe, people are calling it the Tatpocalypse. I know we'll get through it. I've been through these kind of things before in this business, and it does seem like, it's scary and the economy is not so good right now. But that inspiration keeps me going, and also my experience of knowing that when things seem like a drought, that's only temporary. I think the best example I have of bad shit turning into good shit in my life has got to be my wife and my son. Now, I met my wife when I was the best example I have in my life of good shit coming out of bad shit has to be my wife and my son. I was really, really in my methamphetamine addictions when my wife and I met through mutual friends. They brought her over to my apartment, and I'd known these mutual friends of ours for a long time. I grew up with them in Hoopa, and so they brought her over to my apartment, and it was right when I had relapsed for the third time, but I was still cognitive for the most part. But when they brought her over, like we hit it off pretty much immediately, and they immediately knew that there was something going on with me, and we were trying to tell her, hey, watch out, he's addicted to meth. I could tell he's got that tweaker vibe or whatever. And but she kept coming to visit me. She kept coming over. For some reason, I don't know, man. Like I can't tell you. There was for some reason, her and I like stuck together, stayed together. And when I went to the mental hospital and I was locked up again, she came up and visited me, held my hand when she wasn't supposed to. We weren't supposed to touch, And then, I finally got out, and I was lucky enough to be able to just move in with her and her friend Jessica. With her, I was lucky enough to be able to move in with her and a roommate, and they weren't going to let me out of the mental hospital unless I had a safe place to go, and she offered a safe place to go, and we'd only been together for a few months, and so my God, and then I got to marry her, and then we have a son now, and he's 24 years old now. So all this happened probably like 27, 28-ish years ago. And my dad would always say, like, God sent me an angel and allowed me to marry her. And I agree with that. It's one of those things where I feel like there was some divine intervention that happened in my life, and that something really good. My entire life came out of this crappy situation I had found myself in. And it gave me the space to heal, or start healing, and start finding ways to take responsibility for myself and to stop blaming my dad for everything. One of the things I had to learn to do pretty quickly was to stop blaming my father for all the shit that happened to me, or at least stop blaming him for my drug problems and everything, so that way I could like save my own life that way. It gave me the space to do that. When I first moved in to our apartment, I basically hid from the world for like a year. And then as the voices slowly like started to quiet down, the longer I got out, I stayed away from the methamphetamines. I started going out into the world again, going to do things. That was a scary process. It may take some time, but I'm telling you, good shit can come out of bad situations. That conversation definitely gave me a lot to ponder. So thank you all for listening and watching. I'll see you on the next episode.